But right now, let's hear from someone who literally wrote the book on timing your retirement, Mary Sterk. Mary Sterk is the owner of Sterk Financial Services based in South Dakota and author of the new book, Ready to Pull the Retirement Trigger, a strategic guide to retiring with confidence. She's also a classic American success story, having overcome many obstacles to build a thriving business and a career. Mary was once a teenage mom, living in low-income housing and raising two small children without child support. Today, on the other hand, she's a highly successful and highly respected wealth management specialist, author, coach, and radio personality, and also, near and dear to my own self, an airplane pilot. A great thing that we have in common. Mary, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here.
Let's talk a bit about your story before we dive into today's topic, because it really is inspiring to anybody who's watching the show. You know, you're quoted as saying, if I can achieve this, then anyone can. Do you truly believe that?
You know, I do. I think that everybody has the resources within them to achieve the goals that they have. And my story could be replicated by anybody who has the drive and the motivation to create a brighter future for themselves.
Well, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. That gives hope to some people that are watching our show today that, you know, maybe feeling a little down and out, a little depressed. And I agree with you completely. So tell me, what attracted you toward this career in the financial industry and helping other people with their money?
Well, I came into the industry mostly because I needed to figure out how money worked for myself. By the time I was 19 years old, I was already a divorced single mother with two kids under 2 years old, and I needed to learn how money worked in order to be able to create a better life for us. So I went back to school, I got an education, I got my certified financial planning designation, and used that information to help build my own life back up, but also then to share that experience and wisdom with people to help them move forward with their own financial journey.
So in the 30 seconds or so we have left in this one segment, can you tell me what is the most important thing you learned that you'd like to tell our viewers about when it comes to managing their money? If there's one thing.
The one thing is that money buys you choices. That's what money does. And aligning the money that you have with the choices you want to make during your retirement is the crux of what a good retirement plan is all about.
So money doesn't bring you happiness, but it brings you choices and flexibility, which then can bring you happiness. So there's one step in the middle. Great. I love it. Mary, thank you. Please stick around. We have a lot more to talk about right after the break. And you are watching The Income Generation. So let's welcome back Mary Sterk. Mary, you know, it's funny because we talked about retirement before, and you know, in the book you have this story about a 50-year-old flight instructor, and this flight instructor didn't think that he or she could retire for a long time, and you were able to convince this person that really they were only 2 years away from retiring.
Right.
Can you talk about that for a minute? 'Cause that's a pretty neat story.
Yeah, that was a great story. And we were able to take the top-down analysis like you just talked about and figure out what that number was that they needed, and then add back in the things that were going to be important to them post-retirement, like being able to do some traveling. And in that person's situation, they wanted to actually go back to get some additional education in the aviation industry. And so we put a plan together that pinpointed the exact point that, given a set of variables, they would be able to do that. The beauty of this is that it bought them about 8 to 10 years of their life back instead of having to stay at the job that they were at like they originally thought they'd have to do.
Mm-hmm. That's great. So I know with your obvious youthful appearance, it's clear to me that you're not going to retire for a long time, but maybe that's a great goal for you. Come out and become a certified flight instructor as a retirement job, many years down the road, of course. Have you ever thought about that?
I think that would be a lot of fun. I love flying, and although I might have a youthful experience, I am already a grandmother, and so I want to fly around the country and watch my grandkids grow.
Well, there must be something with that good living in South Dakota. I have to give you a lot of credit. God bless you. You know, you've also talked in your book, we've talked earlier in the show, as you've heard, about the fact that retiring isn't just a financial decision. And you highlighted in the book 2 other major factors to consider. And I'd like you to identify those focus areas for our viewers, please.
I think that retirement really comes down to being like a three-legged stool. And so the first leg is the financial factors that we just talked about, but the other two legs really are health-related factors as well as emotional readiness. Emotional readiness can take a lot of different forms, but that is a huge component of a solid retirement plan. The health-related matters can be health insurance, health care, long-term care type of issues. That's a second huge issue in retirement. And focusing on one of the legs of this stool without making sure all three are solid can really create a problem if you don't have all of the legs solidified.
Can you think of a story within your own client base, maybe somebody that met you after they retired, that retired without having all three legs in place, and maybe they regretted it?
Yeah, so I have had several people that have not focused on the healthcare side of things before they retired. And I've seen this happen with clients, especially with their parents as they've gone through retirement. A long-term care or chronic illness has hit, and all of a sudden, tens of thousands of dollars a year out of their budget are going to a nursing home, and it's leaving the spouse in a pinch because they don't have the same amount of income coming in to live on that they normally did. So that's why it's so important to take all of those factors into consideration before you pull that retirement trigger to make sure that you have things set up well.
So now you've turned this into what you call a 5-step process. And it starts with understanding your own money philosophy. I'd like you to talk about the process and also, tell us, do most people come to the table understanding their money philosophy, or is that a discovery process you have to take them through?
No, the money philosophy is not something that people really even know that they consciously have, but somebody's money philosophy really comes from their attitudes about money, and those attitudes start from the time that they're very young. So I always delve into with people what are their earliest money memories and how was money for them when they grew up, because I think that that will inform what their money philosophy actually is. And I think that it starts with understanding how they think and feel about money, and then we move into what their goals and objectives are to figure out what they want the next phase of life to look at, and then we are able to marry those things together to make sure that the money that they have is aligned well with the life that they want to live going forward.
You sound like a psychologist now. Everything goes back to your childhood, right?
I think that can sometimes be true. I see a lot of times that people who grew up where money was easy aren't as worried about taking risk with it. But people who grew up where money was scarce oftentimes have a very deep fear that even though there's a lot of money in their portfolio, there still could be a place or a reason that they run out. So there's certain fears that are embedded into us depending on how we grew up around money.
Sure, limiting beliefs that go right from childhood. I've seen that myself. So what are the 5 steps that you take people through that you mention in the book?
So when you're ready to go through your planning, the first thing you want to do is understand where you are now, because all progress really starts with telling the truth about here is where you are today. And then we want to understand where you want to go. That's bringing in the goals and objectives. And then we have to figure out the bridge of how to get there. So how do you take all of that information and translate it into something that is going to ensure a comfortable retirement that you never run out of money? So those steps get us to the point where you understand whether or not work is optional for you. I call that the retirement mecca. That's the point where work is optional. Doesn't mean you have to quit,
Sure.
but it means that you could if you wanted to. And that's just really a delicious level of freedom for people. And once you know what that point is, then you can align the rest of your life behind that and go ahead and pull that retirement trigger.
It's amazing how much more fun work can be when you don't have to go to work every day, and that's a very, very good point. Unfortunately, all good things must come to an end. Time flies when you're having fun, and it's been great today spending time with you, Mary. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show, David.
Now, coming up in just a bit, I'm going to talk more about knowing the right time to retire with my fellow financial advisors at my Financial Advisors Roundtable. But before that, Miranda is going to break down some of today's most important financial headlines. Stay tuned. You're watching The Income Generation.